Okay, so the light of meditation theory is a practice developing our candle light like wisdom. And the reason for saying the candle light like wisdom is because we do have wisdom. Everybody has the capability or the capability of being able to understand things. You know, this is something that is all of us possess, because what happens is that our confusions and our ability to distinguish confusion from wisdom, you know, is there. It's always there. Like, our confusions are not one with our minds. So therefore, if they're separate, if we can separate them, then that means something exists beyond the confusion. So what happens is, in developing our candlelight like wisdom, is what we're talking about, developing our knowledge or our insight in what we should do or how we should practice. And in this text right here, what we're trying to do is to go, you know, get another form or another method of looking at Dharma in terms of what we should practice and what we shouldn't practice. So, of course, it's, you know, all this other stuff is here. Printing first. This is the first printing of the book. These are all the chapters that we went through. And first of all, we talk about the light of meditation. In the beginning of the light of meditation, we have the preface, whatever. And it says, understanding that the only way this book will be benefit to those who read it, I offer my prostrations to all the great holders of the lineage. You know, when we talk about lineage, we're talking about an unbroken line of teachings and explanations that we can point this all the way back to the time of the Buddha. If we can't trace, or if whatever we're saying does not have a lineage behind it, then we don't have the ability to identify that the teachings themselves are that of the Buddha. It becomes something else, right? If we describe things that we cannot find its sources within the sutras and tantras, then we know that there is no lineage, that whoever started, you know, the explanation of that particular thing have decided that this is their commentary or their what do you call it, their own personal tenet, and it not really is the commentary and tenet that we can trace back to the Buddha. So, to the truth embodied in refuge, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, Kachi Ling Rinpoche, Kachi Chijen Rinpoche, to the essence of wisdom of all the Buddhas, Geshe Ngawandage, Geshe Rapten, Tsongkhapa, because of Tsong Rinpoche, sorry. To the essence of morality, Ladi Rinpoche, Sukam Rinpoche, to the embodiment of wisdom, because of Geshe Lama Tutin Yeshe, to the abandonment of enthusiasm, to the embodiment, sorry, not the abandonment, to the embodiment of enthusiastic perseverance, Lama Zopa Rinpoche. You know, to the compassion of the Buddhas, Kuno Lama Rinpoche, Kenzu Rinpoche Geshe Dundra Toke, Kenzu Rinpoche Lobsan Tuten, to the essence of patience and perseverance, Geshe Losam Palden and Geshe Shakya, from now until attainment of a light of the essence of the teachings I prostrate. This is really, in terms of myself, you know, it can be traces the origins of the teachings that I personally have received. You know, all these teachers here are my previous teachers. You know, in the explanation it says to Lama Zopa Rinpoche, the enthusiastic perseverance. It's very hard to find a teacher that has more enthusiastic perseverance than that of Lama Zopa. You know, Lama Zopa is definitely a great practitioner. And you know, that's why I said that each quality, has a particular quality. The Buddha of wisdom, Geshe Jampa, incredible wisdom and insight. So these, you know, this marks a lineage of teachings that stem, you know, from me all the way back to my teachers and their teachers and their teachers, back to Nalanda, you know, back to the actual, you know, to the holders of the lineage up until the time of the Buddha himself spoke. So this is incredible. It's a long lineage. And the reason for doing this is based upon how the Tibetan texts actually explain that first you have chaktoa, prostrations. You make prostrations in order to gain enough merit in order to receive these teachings. So we make prostrations to them, you know, in order to gain, you prostrate to the embodiment of the Buddha, which is one's own lineage of teachers. This is the embodiment of the Buddha. By the force of inspiration, that is the only reason for attaining my happiness, for the benefit of all that my teachers have inspired for me and the sake of sentient beings. I write this book. This is kind of like what they call Tsombe Damja, which is that you're making, and that I'm going to complete, you know, I'm going to write this book, and the what do you call it, the commitment in order to not only write it but to make a completion of this. So this is kind of it follows within the lineage or the method in which the Buddha Dharma has been taught, and especially the lineage in terms of what the Gelugpa tradition, who we're Gelugpa. This is within the Gelugpa tradition, you know, which stems from here all the way to Sarah, all the way to Nalanda, you know, and then back to to some of the great teachers, and you know, of course, Buddha. So here we got the introduction to this. It's a meditation and intellectual examination. When we talk about meditation, intellectual examination of information is not always understood as being meditation. But the reality is, as we've read previously, is that the examinatory meditation is what we consider as becoming acquainted with virtue. When you're studying the book, you're becoming acquainted with how you should practice, or how we should practice. So therefore, this is meditation. Meditation can be broken down into two: Chegom, Jogom. Chegom, which means examination, Chepa, is that you're examining or looking at the thing in terms of whether it's true or not true, you know, if it can be accepted or not accepted. From the power of examination in understanding what should be practiced and what should not be practiced, we set a foundation of what do you call it, of morality, or, you know, a foundation of practice, or a foundation of knowledge of what we should be doing in order to eventually attain the path, or eventually attain a liberation, or to attain happiness in general. So this is what meditation is about. Meditation is not about stretching. You know, it's not about feeling good, or, you know, developing good health for this life. Meditation, in terms of Buddhist meditation, is what we're talking about. We're not talking, anybody has the capability of being able to define in accordance to their own school of thought what they mean by meditation. So you hear many people talk about many types of meditation and all this other stuff, but no, within the framework of Buddhism, within the framework of the tradition, within the framework of the lineage, you know, we talk about meditation in terms of practice, because there's two types. It's been mentioned. Qigong, which is examinatory meditation. Jogong, which is formal. You sit, you know, you sit like, like the Buddha would be sitting, and you contemplate, and you develop single pointed concentration. Whatever you're doing, this is Jopa. Jopa, which means is to remain. So, you're actually doing that meditation. But what comes before is so important. The hearing of the teachings, right? We hear the teachings because of the reason that this gives us the capability of being able to understand what the teachings are saying. So hearing, tripa, samba, is once you hear the instructions, the ability in order to discern or determine whether the teachings are right or wrong is chepa, which means examine. This is a time that we actually do the examination. And then after all of the instructions and everything that we understand well, when you sit in formal meditation in order to develop a strong understanding of it based upon single pointed concentration, what happens is that is formal meditation. That's formal meditation. There's no shortcut. There are no shortcuts. This is what we hear. This is how we, as meditators, this is how we, as practitioners, should understand how we should go about or go forward in terms of learning the Dharma. So, what can be more important to the beginner than knowing that there are definite guidelines and rules to direct us through proper meditation? That's what the first sentence is saying. That's what the first sentence is saying is that there are guidelines. The understanding that there are guidelines should be one of the most important things for us as practitioners, because based upon these guidelines, we will gain our own insight into what's going on. And once we gain insight into what's going on, we become a lineage, per se, a lineage holder of that particular tradition, and we have the capability of, without flaw, to pass that particular thing on. But it's very important to be able to hear the teachings. I think that of all that you do, hearing is probably, you should be the longest. You hear and understand, get many, to get many explanations upon the subjects that, that the religious subjects that we have to understand is very important. And then afterwards, one of the longest period is also that of the contemplation. And when we talk about contemplation, if you're sitting in a group and you're talking together and you're going over the various aspects of the teachings of the Buddha, this is meditation. You can almost say that this is group meditation. You're sharing your insight into it and discussing. Discussing whether your understanding is that is correct or incorrect. So the end factor of it is that we should be able to develop this to the point where we understand what we're saying as being correct, right? So that's what we're looking for. There have been many books written and different interpretations of what meditation may be. Like I said, there are many different schools of thought or whatnot, but right now what we're talking about is within the framework of a Buddha Dharma. So, but during the time that I've spent with fellow practitioners, it has become more evident that the basic skills necessary to contemplate successful practices remain a mere desire that haunt our minds rather than become an important and useful part of our daily lives. This is what, meditation in the Buddhist terms should be something that we should be able to utilize anytime. It's not anything that is it shouldn't be something beyond our own personal capabilities. If we're sitting and we're thinking about something, we're thinking about the idea of impermanence and death, and we're contemplating that, well, then we've done well. This is a part of meditation. If we see people and we desire to take and we give to other people in order to help them, then this is also meditation. This is reviewing or understanding what's necessary for us in order to, to not only attain enlightenment, but us ourselves to attain happiness. The goal of meditation should be that we develop within ourselves the capability of developing more and more virtue, right? And eliminate as much suffering as possible. If you do this for yourself in the next life, then you're practicing that of the being of the smaller path. If you're doing this for just liberation, then that means you're practicing that for the being of the intermediate path. If you're doing this in accordance to the Mahayana tradition, and you're doing this for the benefit of all sentient beings, then your practice becomes that of the practice of the great vehicle. The vehicle, whatever vehicle you have, is something that you yourself have to determine, right? It's not just because the teachings are Mahayana that we become Mahayana, right? The teachings are within the framework of Mahayana, but the real Mahayana, right, is our own personal motivation. So this is what we have to contemplate and think. There are many schools of thought that try to focus on what they deem necessary for the lay person to learn and to grow in the knowledge of meditation. Many different schools. So the teachings here and the explanation here is to be able to divide and to understand us and how we practice as in opposition to how they might deem as necessary. It's very important to understand. If you want clarity in your practice, it's very important for us to be able to understand how we view things. Some of these schools use terminologies that attempt to express a concept of greater consciousness to which we all belong to. Something similar to a collective consciousness, but unfortunately, they never seem to present enough information necessary for us to make vital changes in our lives, or give information necessary to validate the foundation of their beliefs. We hear many, many things. If you read many books, people are saying many different things. And they use many terminologies. They might use many New Age terminologies, or terminologies that have become cliches. But they don't really take the time to explain, what are they actually talking about? What are they actually saying? A lot of people get a little perturbed at how the practice within the Galup goes, because we actually ask the question, well, what do you mean by that? When you say something is something, when you say consciousness, when you say consciousness, first of all, if you're talking about collective consciousness, what do you mean by consciousness itself? It's very collective consciousness. It sounds, it's kind of like a catchy tune, collective consciousness. We all of a sudden we become one big thing and we're all together and kumbaya, But the question comes is that, well, is that true? Is it that one day I become you and you become me? That doesn't really make very much sense if we know anything about, what do you call it, meditation, or we know the nature of our mind, nature of our own consciousness. In reality, precise terminology. This is what separates us, and a lot of time in terms of Galupa, is that there's a necessity to be precise in explaining the words that you use, or the words that we use. That's why we have what, mountains of definitions and mountains of commentaries and whatnot, in order to, because what happens if one word is used in a particular way, say at the time of Buddha, but the interpretation of that particular word changes over time, then what happens is that we've lost the lineage, because we're not interpreting in accordance to the author. We're interpreting things in accordance to our own beliefs. And the reality is that it's been our own personal beliefs that keeps us actually within the realm of samsara. So the reason why we have to take more time and look into and ask the question, what did the Buddha say, or what was he saying, is important, because Buddha giving us the teaching is in line to the idea and notion that he himself has already traversed, all the suffering that we're going on now. So he understands the road. And let me rephrase this so people will not think that this is that we're talking about men. He, she, right? You don't have to be a man in order to be Buddha. All right. I say he because, of course, it's easier to use one word, but the reality is that whatever form the Buddha takes, we develop faith in him, not because of the reason that he is he or she is a great person or historically great. We take refuge because of the reason that the teachings are being taught to us without any fault, and the teachings and the method that is being used is what's going to cause us to eventually attain liberation, or to attain a better birth. So it's very important. And you'll see many explanations just on one word, even in the commentaries that they use. Even when we talk about the tenets, there are many commentaries regarding the usage of words, and how and whether one school believes in it or the other school does not believe in it. There's a purpose behind that, because the idea is being able to, once we decipher in its entirety what the Buddha meant, then we understand his point of view, right? It is really understanding his point of view rather than interpreting his point of view in accordance to how we believe it might be. This is very important. We find many times in translations that the meaning of the words are not well described, or hidden, for whatever reason there might be. They're hidden because of the incapability of the person who's translating that to be precise, thinking that a generic explanation is good rather than a precise explanation. Precise is better. In reality, precise terminology and meditational instructions on how we should use our conscious activities may be the door to answering some of our most pending questions. Yeah, we have to know. Basically, it says we have to know what we're talking about. We have to have an understanding. This is not a guessing game. Religion is not a guessing game. Buddhism is not a guessing game. The division, when you ask yourself what are the difference between various religions or whatnot, it's based upon the theory. Although practice might be similar. Practice practice should be understood in accordance to the theory in which is being expounded. You hear many people come up with many very, very strange and awkward things. It's not because of the reason that the teachings are strange and awkward. It's because that they have not been well informed on the notion of what is or what is or what is not, or what should or should not be understood. You know, so the idea is confusion comes when there is lack of clarity, or let's put it this way, the lack of understanding of the person who's making the interpretation. So when you're reading through various books and the more you read it, the more confused you become, I wouldn't blame myself. You know, I've personally have what do you call, studied all of the Abhisamaya Alankara, you know, as part of our training, and I've read it in some excerpts from other commentaries that people have made, and really, I don't know what they're talking about. I have no idea. I can read it in English and not understand what they're saying, but read it in Tibetan and understand exactly what they're saying. So the question comes up of the type of training that has been utilized in trying to get this, you know, to get the Tibetan understanding into the English. It becomes more and more complex because of the reason that people have not been meticulous in the idea of exchanging or finding out exactly what the author is trying to say, right? Buddha said, that the Buddha himself does not have the capability of transferring his understanding, you know, to someone else, right? So the idea is that to rely upon the idea of him showing the teachings, and when he's saying showing the teachings, he's talking about showing the teachings of emptiness. I think at the beginning, I think that he talks about to make, you know, effort, you know, in understanding what the Buddha has been talking about when he talks about emptiness, and not only emptiness, but also all the other teachings. If you be meticulous in trying to learn this. Don't be fast. Don't have the concept. The goal should not be that I will become a great teacher. I will become somebody who makes a lot of money on this particular thing because I like doing it. You know, if you do that, it only becomes a worldly dharma. If the concept is that if I practice this will make me better. Not only this will benefit this life, but it also will benefit future lives. Should be the motivation that we use. This should be at least the lowest motivation we should have in listening to these teachings and practicing these teachings, is having the concept that there is a future life and we are working toward something, right? There's a goal behind it. We ourselves, in practicing the teachings, we should be goal-oriented beyond the limitations of this particular life, you know, or else it's just because it's just getting another job, you know. That's all. It becomes another $1 billion industry. Buddhism becomes an industry. It becomes an industry for the elite. You know, it doesn't become an industry for the benefit of all sentient beings, which of course that's what the intention of the Buddha in teaching giving the teaching is the concept that all sentient beings are in the state of suffering, right? And they wish to be out of the state of suffering, and they wish to have happiness. Not because this is a multi-billionaire, it's a multi-billion-dollar undertaking. So where the concepts of being part of a great consciousness do not hold into hold interesting storylines. It's very nice. I mean, really, it's almost like the ultimate kumbaya, that everybody gets together and all of a sudden we're all together, and whatever I'm thinking you understand, and whatever you're thinking I understand, and we all become one, and I can't distinguish myself from you, and we're all one and everything. Beautiful, wonderful. Wonderful, wonderful story. But remember, it's a story, right? It's not reality. You know, the reality is, and the explanation will come, well, why is it that we separated from the beginning? Why do we separate? We have to, and so many questions arise. You know, if we were all one, and it was so good in Kumbaya at that time, why is it that we separated? And now we have to find a way back? And what makes it might not happen again? It doesn't really make sense. It's a good story, but, you know, stories are things that you should be seen in good movies. Yeah, but it's not how good movies are not how we practice the Buddha Dharma. You know, we practice the Buddha Dharma as a religion based upon the understanding that from virtuous actions comes happiness, and from non-virtuous actions comes suffering, right? So it do hold an interesting storyline, but the truth behind the concept must be proven beyond the realm of a story. If you say something, you should be able to have the facts in order to back it up. If you do not have the facts and it becomes just a story, then we know that it does not have any factual point of reference. Facts are good. The more that you live by facts, the simpler and less complex the world becomes. You know, people think that the best is you don't live with the rules and regulations. That rules and regulations are that which what do you call it? Put us in bondage. But that's not true. Rules and regulations based upon the correct motivation of the person who's instigated these rules and regulations is something that is essential for our future. You know, the method of attaining Buddhahood is the accumulation of three countless eons of virtue. That means that over 3 countless eons, the Buddha has practiced bodhisattva, the great compassion. 3 countless eons of doing this. So we know what we call Gyupunsen Sopa, that the perfect, non-flawed cause will only bring a perfect and non-flawed, unflawed result. From Gyupunsen Sopa comes Debupunsen Sopa, is the ultimate result or the perfect result. You know, so this is how we start thinking and understanding. You know, if you ask a person who has spent their lifetime, cutting wood, every time they see wood, they look at it differently than what we look at it. You know, they look at it in terms of what they might be able to create out of. That's because they have the habit that has been instilled upon them to be able to look at things differently. To understand how our consciousness works and how our consciousness, our conscious perceptions relate to our daily lives is essential for us who strive to incorporate meditation into our lives. So the idea of understanding how our mind works. There are many books. We'll eventually go into them. One of the books that we're talking about is Lodi, and it's a book regarding mind and consciousness, all the various definitions and how we define what we say perception, and how the mind understands things in relationship to the object. You know, is essential. these are building blocks that will benefit us very much in terms of our own personal beliefs and understanding, But my advice is don't be in any rush. It might take time, but what else are you going to do, really? You have the choice of thinking, well, maybe I'm going to do this for a short time and do something else. But in thinking that, what happens is that we've limited our capability of gaining more happiness or understanding what's necessary for us to be happy, right? So it's important, that we find ways by understanding our mental, what makes our mind tick, learning the nature of our minds itself, and then incorporating that knowledge and understanding that this is meditation, and our lives themselves are no more or shouldn't be no more than an extension of this type of meditation. What do we need? We need guidelines. Using guidelines and references to understand the inner mechanics of our mental activities in relationship to the surroundings we live in requires flawless information. So here again, we go back to the concept of the teachings of the Buddha, and our capability of understanding if it is true or not. And we understand does it make sense? The more that we study, is it something that brings upon ourselves a deeper understanding or insight to what's going on, or does it only raise more questions? I think that this is a good balancing way of attacking any particular situation. Even if we don't know the entirety of the answer, does what we know right now, does that bring us a deeper understanding and deeper insight to what the teachings themselves are saying? If it does, then we should examine it more. One thing about the teachings of the Buddha is that the more that you examine and the deeper that you look and the more that you think about it, the deeper and deeper it becomes. Not only does it become deeper, but the clarity of our understanding becomes more and more profound. It's very important. So we live, so we should utilize and look for this flawless information. Perfect and logical references and a commitment to strive toward the goal of gaining inner peace. This is what we're trying to do. So we want flawless information, we want perfect and logical references, and a commitment to strive toward goals to gain inner peace. That's what we're looking for. We're not meditating. We're not meditating to be able to jump up in the air or to float on a cloud. What good is it if we gain the capability of floating on a cloud but don't have internal peace? It's the same thing as a person who has the majority of riches, has more than half the entire earth's bounty of wealth, but has no inner peace. Materially, they're second to none. Internally, they've not reached the point in their lives, nor can their wealth have the capability of bringing on internal peace. The internal peace is brought upon by what the Buddha says, not by the wealth, not by the wealth that we accumulated. So the idea is redirecting and rectifying our motivation, understanding our motivation, understanding what the texts themselves are saying, understanding more completely what reason and logic has to do with us in terms of getting us to the point of deeper insight. This is essential. You know, no, this is not dry logic. This is not dry logic. This is meditation. You know, what you hear things that people are using, and they're using in terms of getting a piece of the pie, meaning, you know, getting the financial benefits of what do you call it, of materialistic dharma. You know, that's another thing. That's not anything that's going to benefit us. That's not even dharma. That's, you know, we say worldly dharma, but worldly dharma is dharma without knowledge of the reason of refuge. You know, we talk about, more than most, we talk about the concept of refuge. So, in this book, we will examine the necessary steps we must take to develop our meditation. So this is the purpose of the book, is to give a deeper understanding and to go into a conversation regarding what we mean about meditation and how we are going to actually develop this type of meditation, develop it deeper, how we're going to actually, you know, how we're going to change our wisdom. Remember back that candlelight wisdom, right? That flickering wisdom, candlelight wisdom, candles inside the house. If you close all the windows and everything like that, no matter how much external winds are blowing, the candle remains the same. It doesn't flicker. But once you open up the door, you know, open up the door of body, speech, mind, and other information comes up, what happens is that wisdom might start to flicker a little bit. So the idea is in the example is to limit, if we understand what's necessary in order to refrain from the winds coming into the house and disturbing, then we have the capability, having the candle, to illuminate everything that's within the house. You know, that's why at the beginning of the wisdom of Lama Yeshe, he would say, understanding our candlelight like wisdom is what he said. I've not heard, I think that more people should be talking about it, because if you talk about incredible instructions and deep insight, I think that just the beginning of talking about what's going on internally with ourselves and how all these disturbances, you know, because attachment, you know, anger, and in ignorance, how much they play a role in disturbing our capability to understand. And the way to understand it and to become victorious is to identify the problem. When you take the problem and you identify the problem, then you have the capability of applying antidotes. It might be as simple as saying, I don't want to do that. There's a story of a meditator, and he went to his benefactor's house, and the benefactor gave some from I guess it was Tsampa. Everybody knows Tsampa, right? So he gave some Tsampa to him, and the benefactor left the room, and he thought to himself, he says, oh, maybe I should just take a little bit more. And he took his hand and he put it in the Tsampa thing, and with the other hand he caught his hand and he started yelling, thief, thief, there's a thief in the house. And what happened is that the benefactor came and looking around, where's the thief? And he looked and he said, here, there's a thief right here. This is a form. He said no to himself. You know, he had enough wisdom and to understand that yes, this was a form of stealing. So therefore, he used another method in order to expose what his wrong views were and recorrect his direction. Many, 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 many different ways. Whatever you're doing, whatever difficulty comes up, whatever method that you use, you should utilize the method. But your methods that you use should be based upon real teachings, you know, not assumed teachings, you know. So in this book, we will examine the necessary steps we must take to develop our meditation. So this whole thing is based upon the understanding of what meditation is about. We will discuss goals. Meditation is goal. Always understand meditation is goal oriented. We must understand that there is a goal and there is a means. And if we do what's right, the goal is attainable. But whether the goal being attainable or not should also be part of our meditation. We should be able to convince ourselves, is this goal, is it attainable or is it not attainable? We will discuss goals, methods, the different levels of motivations, like we just kind of briefly went through in the introduction where we gave a little bit of commentary on that, different levels of motivations. But I would like to say right now is that we should also always aspire and train ourselves now that our motivation should always be Mahayana. Maha means great. Yana means vehicle. That's a great compassion. Based upon the great compassion. You know, the motivation should be based upon the great compassion. Right? So, and we will meditate on developing our morality to make us better Buddhists. So the idea is discussion is not if you are a Buddhist. The discussion should really be, is that, am I the better Buddhist? Are we a good Buddhist? What we are doing, is it really what we should understand as being, you know, Buddhist practice? You know, not if someone else is a good Buddhist. We shouldn't be pointing our fingers and saying, well, they don't do this. That's not going to get you liberation. What will bring liberation is the idea is, did I do what's right? When I saw them doing that and I accused them of doing something, was I right? Did I have enough information in order to carry out that particular view of that particular person? Was that wrong view? What did I do? What can I do? I'm not saying punish yourself. You don't punish yourself. That's not Buddhism. You're not supposed to take a whip and start beating yourself because of the reason that you weren't perfect in your initial capability. Buddhism is not about self-destruction, you know, or self-crucifixion. It's about becoming better every day in increments. And Tibetans always say, tikpa, sakpe gyalso. Tikpa, which means individual drops. That from individual drops, amassed a great ocean. You know, the great and incredible, vast ocean is begun because individual drops started to accumulate. So the way that we go forth in our training and understanding of Buddhism is not from the point of view that in 1 day or 2 days you're going to be much better. How is that possible when we have a history of countless eons of being born in states of suffering and doing things to other sentient beings and harming other sentient beings? How is it possible that we think that within a short given time that we're going to change this tendency? It's not a possibility. It's irrational. You know, what's rational is understanding that if you make a fault, right it. Try to do better. Every day, try to make yourself better. Every day, if you sit down and you think about, and you just motivate yourself. That's what prayers are about. Prayers are not about making a prayer and changing the reality of what's going to happen in the world. Prayers are about changing the reality within ourselves. It's a reminder to ourselves, right? Prayer is a reminder to ourselves of what we want to be. And when we understand what we want to be, we ourselves become the vehicle that will change the world, because we've changed ourselves. Don't underestimate yourself. You know, if you're a member of our organization, never take any time more than a second to criticize yourself. 1 second you have, then change your mind and do something else that is more beneficial. All right. Well, we have 3 minutes just for blessings. We'll just say this: Buddhist versus non-Buddhist meditations, and we'll stop here. Okay. All right, Anila, you can turn it off.